What's up? Pat Biondi here with the Elevate Movement podcast, powered by the National Sports Association. Today I'm talking with Mickey Jannis, a former teammate of mine in the New York Mets organization. Mickey pitched parts of, I believe, 11 seasons between the minor leagues and independent ball. He went from being a conventional pitcher, right-handed pitcher, 88 to 92, and made the transition to a knuckleball pitcher 2 or 3 years into his pro career. So we're going to talk about his journey going from high school to college into pro ball, making that transition, and then also talk about some of his experiences throughout the minor leagues, his training, and his experience getting called up this past year with the Baltimore Orioles. So excited to have you guys hear my conversation with Mick. He's an awesome dude. Always went about his business the right way, worked extremely hard, and continued to grind and have belief that he could get up to the big leagues. Really cool to see him realize that dream this past year. So I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. I hope you guys could take something out of it. And yeah, let's get to it. You know, I was thinking about leading up to this. We played together for 3-4 years, and there was a lot about your story that I feel like I don't know about. So I'm actually kind of excited to talk to you about your progression. So for you, growing up, maybe in high school, going into college, what was the recruiting process like for you? And I'm assuming that you weren't a knuckleball pitcher at that time. So what was that process like? Being in high school, getting recruited, going to college, and then we'll kind of get into pro ball after that.
Yeah, so I had to prove myself at almost every level that I've played at. So even starting in high school, wasn't highly recruited. Actually, my senior year, I transferred to high school in California because I wanted to go to a California college. So I wanted to establish like residency and to get like in-state tuition to make school
Okay.
cheaper. So I went to live with my grandpa in California in like San Luis Obispo area, and really just kind of got noticed that way by junior college. By playing, they actually came to see our shortstop, and I was pitching that day and threw really well. And ever since then, like the junior college that I went to wanted me. So I ended up going that route. And then actually towards the end of my senior year of high school, got noticed by a couple D1 schools. But they pretty much offered either a walk-on spot or if somebody declined a scholarship, then that would open up some money for me. But never really heard back from them after that. So I assumed that the guy accepted the scholarship. So I just went the junior college route, which was fine with me because really, if you're not a stud coming out of high school, you're not going to play a whole lot at the Division I level from what I've seen. So I was totally fine going junior college route, and then just same kind of thing. Freshman year, didn't pitch a whole lot. Really wanted to be a two-way guy in junior college, but that ended up not happening. They thought I was too valuable as a pitcher, so became a closer and just got noticed that way. Just really, again, just never really initiated anything. Just kind of got seen as at games that coaches came to and things like that. So was recruited by two main schools out of junior college, Cal State Bakersfield, which is where I went, and Fresno State, which ended up winning the College World Series the year I was getting recruited there. And my college coach was actually good friends with their head coach at Fresno State, and he really wanted me to go there. But I never really felt like that they loved me. They liked me as a pitcher, but the other school, Cal State Bakersfield, their coach recruited me, and they were like, "We want you to be our guy. We love you. You're going to be, our guy." And they just started a baseball program there. They were trying to make the jump from D2 to D1, so they needed a baseball program to do that. So they created it. Basically, when I got recruited, we walked over to a field of weeds and stuff, and it was like, "This is where our baseball facility is going to be," and we want you to be a part of that. And I don't know, it just seemed like a cool idea, and especially the fact that they loved they loved who I was as a pitcher, made me want to go there instead of like this established program at Fresno State. And it turned out, from what I heard a couple years later, was my head coach at junior college and the coach at Fresno State didn't talk for a couple months because he was disappointed that I didn't sign there, the head coach at Fresno State. So actually kind of funny after hearing that. But yeah, again, like I said, I felt like I never thought that Fresno State was in love with me. So it's kind of funny that I heard that a couple years later, that he was that disappointed that he didn't even talk to his friend that was my coach for a couple months. So
what was your experience like at Cal State Bakersfield with it? Was your first year there their first year as a program?
Yeah. Actually, I was able to throw the first pitch out in the school's history.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. But yeah, we showed up, and basically we were practicing at a high school for the first fall. We had junior college transfers and freshmen incoming, so we were like kind of split half and half. And when you're there, I don't think you realize how like special it was. Like, we laid the outfield grass literally on the field. So when you go back and like look at the field, you're like, I laid that grass down. So like that was kind of cool, like looking back at. Again, not as cool when you're actually doing it, as a college student, but looking back now and all those memories that we have of actually building the program from the ground up was pretty cool.
So how did you guys end up doing?
Our first year, we seemed to be playing always good enough to lose. So we competed really well. A lot of learning experiences. I think we won 13 games, and you play around 50 to 60 games in college. So record wasn't very pretty, but yeah, a lot of learning experiences. Second year, so my senior year, we finished around 500. And again, we were an independent school, so we weren't in a conference yet. They were going to join the WAC, was the plan, and now they're actually in the Big West. But
Yeah.
so we were kind of building that foundation. So we played a lot of like good West Coast schools. We played the UCLA's, University of Arizona. We even traveled to the Midwest. We played like Missouri, Nebraska. So we weren't just playing like other bad colleges or anything like that. We were playing some really good California schools. But again, we just we competed really well. Just always ended up on the losing end, it seemed like. So, but I know a lot of teams hated facing us because it just always seemed like a dogfight. We were always battling them. So.
Yeah, I feel like people don't understand, like, a lot of those small schools in California are really good. So like the WAC, the conference that they're in now, both huge baseball conferences. And then you're playing midweek games against UCLA and Stanford and Cal and all those other schools that are out there.
Yeah, exactly.
So you had to have a pretty good year because you got drafted your senior year. So how was your baseball experience personally in those 2 years?
Yeah, like I said, going from junior college to D1, I was like a closer in junior college, and one of the biggest things going to Cal State Bakersfield was they wanted to make me a starting pitcher. So the learning experience of going back to being a starting pitcher, which I hadn't done since high school. So my junior year, there was a huge learning experience there. Trying to get through a lineup 2-3 times again, and just learning a lot about myself, because as a closer, I was pretty much a 2-pitch guy, sinker slider guy. I was throwing like 88 to 92, kind of an average righty. And then my senior year, I knew I needed to change something because I did have games where I struggled. And I think I went like 2-8 my junior year, and the 2 wins I had were the last 2 starts I had of the season. So I knew going into my senior year, I was like, if I, want to keep playing past college, I'm going to have to change something. So I really struggled against left-handed hitters, so I really wanted to work on my changeup, and I developed a cutter because everything seemed like my sinker was going that way, and I had my slider, which was too much movement going the other way. So then I developed my changeup, which went off my sinker, and then a cutter, which went off my slider. So went from a 2-pitch guy mostly to a 4-pitch guy, and I think that was a huge difference that I made. And actually, after my junior year, the way I threw like a natural circle change, and I was playing catch in front of my house with my dad one day, and I was like, you know what, my changeup just isn't good enough. Like, I need to figure out a way to take a little bit more speed off and get some more movement. And that was actually where I thought to myself, I'm like, I throw a good knuckleball. Like, I always threw a good knuckleball, but I never threw it in games because really, if you're a knuckleball pitcher, you pretty much primarily throw a knuckleball. And I spiked my changeup. So instead of throwing like a regular circle change, I took my middle finger, kind of like what guys do on their spike curveball, and I spiked my changeup. And that was a huge difference for me. The first one I threw, it just dropped off the table and I was able to throw at the same arm speed. So that was a huge difference for me going into my senior year. Developed that pitch, and all of a sudden I had 4 pitches. And the cutter came pretty natural to me because I threw a slider, so I was really good with like finger pressure on that. So that came pretty natural. But then the changeup was just something I was fiddling around with in my front yard, and started throwing it, and it worked out for me.
So did it lead to a lot of tangible success, like a tangible shift in win-loss and ERA and all that stuff the next year?
Yeah, I think my ERA dropped off 2 points. And one of the other things I think I changed going into my senior year is my coach loved my slider, but I felt like I was too dominant with it. So again, that's why I wanted to add the 2 other pitches. And my strikeouts actually went down because I wanted to limit my pitch count. So I became more of a ground ball pitcher. So I was throwing more cutters and sinkers, but I was like, it was primarily ground balls. I think I gave up like 10 or so home runs my junior year. And then my senior year, I gave up 2, which happened to be the first 2 starts of the season, I believe. So I went almost 100 innings, giving up 2 home runs in the pre-BB Core bat era, which is almost unheard of because those BSR certified composite bats that they used to have, balls were flying out of the yard. So
what year did you graduate?
We gave up only 2010.
So that was the last year.
2011. Yeah, 2011 they went to the BB Core bats. So
okay.
But yeah, I know my ERA dropped off a couple points or a couple runs to around 4 from almost a 6. And it was even lower than that. I had 2 really bad starts the last 2 games leading up to the draft. But yeah, I threw really well. I threw almost 6 innings, like every start, like getting deep into games, going through lineup multiple times. There were a couple games where I had double-digit strikeouts and lowered my walks, and so everything across the board just got better. Going into my senior year.
So heading up to the draft, leading up to the draft, did you have expectations to get drafted? Did you think, I'm not sure what's gonna happen, or what was your mindset going into it?
I mean, I think I expected to get drafted because I did talk to a few teams right before the draft, but it wasn't really a lot. So I still didn't, like, I expected to get drafted, but I just didn't know like where or by whom or how high. Like, I wasn't really expecting to go like super high in the draft, and this is when it still had 50 rounds. But I had talked to a couple teams after a couple of my good starts. One of them was a Rays scout that I knew liked me, and he sent me a couple text messages like after a couple games, like, "Hey, nice start tonight," stuff like that. So I knew there was interest there, and I think the Blue Jays were like the other team that I knew were interested. But other than that, again, I just kind of went by like how I performed. I wasn't really like reaching out to a lot of teams or anything like that. It was almost like hoping, that someone would call my name that on draft day.
Yeah, and just focus on what you were doing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, just kind of going out and pitch and just kind of control what I could control and going about it that way.
so on draft day, was it an exciting experience, a nerve-wracking experience? What was it like for you?
A little bit of both. Um, it was a 3-day event, and the first day they did the first round. So, obviously wasn't expecting anything there. So the second day, kind of towards the end of the day, it's kind of getting a little disappointing. I think they went up to the 25th or 30th
Yeah.
round on day 2 and still didn't hear my name. So just hoping that third day. And I just remember me and my roommate sitting on our computers all day on our laptops, how it used to be, just following the draft and just listening to the audio of like, so-and-so from this college and all this. And then, at one point I just remember kind of like zoning out. And then that happened to be when I heard my name kind of like in the background. Just like, gosh, man, is it ever going to happen? We're getting into the 40s. And then all of a sudden I kind of like heard my name in the background. I was like, wait a second, I think I just heard my name. And then I hear my roommate scream from his bedroom in our apartment. And then kind of looked at the screen. I was just like, oh my God, it happened. And got a text right away right after that. And then he's just like, I'll call you once the draft is over. And then, just talked to him on the phone, and he just said, congratulations, we'll get your contract out to you and sign, we'll send you here. And just kind of went from there. But yeah, it was just more like it was just like a sigh of relief after like you hear your name and it's like, oh man, I actually got, it's happening. So I'm getting that
Yeah.
opportunity.
Were you the first guy drafted from Cal State Bakersfield?
I was not. There was a reliever. We had 3 guys go in that draft, and we had a reliever get drafted in like the 25th round, and a hitter, an outfielder drafted in like the 36th, I think.
Okay.
And then me in the 44th. So
Okay.
the pitcher in the 25th round did not sign, so I was actually the first pitcher to sign like a pro contract.
That's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
what was the timeline once you got to the Rays? And again, like I don't know the whole backstory, but knowing Tampa and knowing that they had like a knuckleball guy and they were typically have like one guy on their staff that threw a knuckleball, I'm assuming that somewhere there they started to have you throw the knuckleball a little bit.
Actually, not at all. All that happened after I got released by them.
Interesting.
Which
Were they
yeah,
still doing the knuckleball stuff when you were with them? Like did they
no,
still?
they started probably in like 2013 or 2014,
Okay.
I want to say, and I was released by them in 2011 after 2 seasons. So, and I found out about that when I was in independent ball. So I was like, why haven't they called me back? Like, you know, kind of frustrated with it, but at the same time, just kind of doing my thing in indie ball and just hoping somebody would call. But yeah, my last game in 2011, I almost threw the knuckleball for them because we were out of the playoffs and I was in New York Penn League, and they were like, you're going to pitch the last game of the season. And, a week before I was kind of like, I was like, I'm going to fool around with my knuckleball again, see if it's like, I kind of fooled around with it in the outfield, just playing catch and whatever. And I was like, well, why don't we see if they'll let me throw it in the game? And I asked them, and they're like, well, is it any good? And I was like, well, come out next time I play catch and see me throw it. And came out to the line, watched me throw one, and the other pitcher that was playing catch with like squatted down, and the ball was coming at him, and it moved and went between he like reached for his glove, and it went in between his glove and his face, and he completely missed it. And the coach was like, yeah, you could throw it. And then going into that game, I was all for it. Everybody was excited on the team to see this. And then I was pitching the 9th inning, so I was closing out the game. It was like a 2-1 game. And I just remember the pitching coach running down to the field and going like, hey, we want to end the season on a high note, so don't throw the knuckleball at all. And I was like, so disappointed. I've been working on it for like a week to throw it, and then it was just like hit me with that, like as I'm warming up in the bullpen, and it was just like, yeah, don't throw it. Just, go back to being a conventional pitcher for tonight and just finish the game. So I ended up saving the game, and then after the season I got released. So like looking back, it's like should have just thrown it. Like
Yeah.
knowing what I know on pro ball now, it's just like just do your own thing. Like who cares what the coaches say? They really have no say what goes on or anything like that. So it's like, looking back, I was like, man, I wish I would have just thrown it. Could have opened up doors with the Rays then instead of going to indie ball. But
Isn't that a weird?
as a kid, you just don't know.
Isn't that a strange line? Like you want to be coachable and want to help your organization and feel like, okay, these guys have played. They're gonna know what's best for me and what's gonna help me. But I think you always have to understand what you do well too, and kind of that balance between what they're trying to get out of you and how you can get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's tough.
Exactly.
So where'd you go play indie ball after that?
I went to the Lake Erie Crushers in the Frontier League, and so once I got released, I basically just said to myself, like, I'm gonna do this. Like, I'm gonna do something different than everybody else does. Coming out of the Rays, I was, like I said, just an average righty, sinker slider, 88, 92, good slider. But, I was just like, I want to do something different than everybody else does. And I know this pitch is good enough. Like the coaches saw me throw it and they're like, you should throw it. And then they changed their mind. So like, I was like, let's just do it. Went to indie ball and threw it for the first 3 games as like a starting pitcher and really struggled with command, effectively wild. Obviously I'm learning the pitch, never really threw it against teams or hitters very much. So I was just kind of learning about it myself. And after 3 games, I don't know how much you know about indie ball, but it's really all about winning. There's one team, there's one coach, and the coach is coaching for their job. It's not like, well, we're developing guys. So I'm trying to develop and he's trying to win. So he told me, like, we're moving you to the bullpen. And I was like, man, I got to kind of save my job right now. So I went back to being a sinker slider guy to get guys out instead of developing, and basically scrapped it for the rest of the year after 3 starts. And finished the season out really strong, actually. But I just knew, I was like, still didn't get any looks at indie ball doing sinker slider. I was like, I really got to get after it next year. And we got a new coach who knew I was trying to throw a knuckleball, and he was all for it. So stayed with the Lake Erie Crushers, and, I actually threw it out of the bullpen and threw about 40 to 50% of the time and threw really well. So carried that into 2013. And then after 2013, I went to play winter ball in Australia and became a starting pitcher there. And that's really, really when I felt like I started getting to the next level with it in a way. I became a starting pitcher again and really was able to throw it a lot more, like 50, 60, 70% of the time if it was really good. And so that's where I felt like I really started to develop more as a knuckleball pitcher, just because of the reps I was getting against hitters. And then carried that again back to Lake Erie Crushers in 2014. And actually in 2014, I struggled for the first half of the season, and our manager was looking to trade me because I was one of the older guys on the team. So he traded me to a team in the Atlantic League who was looking for a starting pitcher. And in 2014, and basically like the second half of the season just kind of took off with it. Went to a new team, and just I was like, hey, these guys don't know anything about me. For all they know, I am a knuckleball pitcher. Like, I'm just gonna throw it. And I threw it and had like a 2 ERA and went like 5-1 for them. And I think really when they traded for me, they just wanted me for one game, because in indie ball, you can trade guys from different leagues all the way around all the different leagues. And I think they wanted me for like one start, and then they were going to trade me back to the team. And I threw so well. I threw like 8 shutout innings, had like 9 strikeouts, like 1 walk. And they were like, who is this guy? And next thing you know, they kept me, and I was like their ace pitcher down the stretch. Like I said, I was like 4-5-1 with like a 2 ERA, and again, just kind of took off with that. And then 2015, made a couple mechanical changes in the off season, which kind of took me to another level with consistency of like getting no spin on the knuckleball. And that's when, again, I just really took off with my first half of the season. I had like a 1.2 ERA in like 60 innings, I think, with the Long Island Ducks, and that's when the Mets called.
Okay. So you referenced when you got traded to the Atlantic League that you felt a little bit of freedom in the sense of like, okay, these guys don't know any different. Like, I'm a knuckleball pitcher, I'm going to go throw. Was that one of the bigger challenges for you? Like that feeling of, okay, I know I can get guys out throwing fastball slider. This is kind of new, like,
Yeah.
and I'm figuring it out, maybe struggling through it a little bit. Was that ever tough to commit to it fully?
Yeah, I think so, because I had so many other people in baseball, like the coaches who knew me and saw my numbers from like affiliated ball and were like, we know you're good as a, fastball slider pitcher, change up, cutter, whatever. Like, why isn't he throwing this? And, I still think you should throw your fastball and this and that. And I'm like, well, I'm not trying to win games in the Frontier League. I'm trying to get the heck out of here so I can go pitch maybe in the major leagues one day. That's how I viewed it. And, they're like, well, you're getting guys out for me with the fastball slider. So, that's not where I want to be. Everybody's goal in indie ball is to get picked up by an affiliated team and go play Major League Baseball. That's
and just that reality
what everybody wants to do. So,
and just that reality of if you're not throwing 95 plus out of indie ball is probably not going to get picked up unless you have ridiculous numbers.
Yeah, you really have to stand out in indie ball to get an opportunity, or you really have to know somebody high up. Like, hey, I met so and so who's a farm director with the in the Mets or the Rays or whatever, and they might give you a shot that way. But for me, I didn't know that, and I didn't have any scouts reach out to me, and that type of stuff. So it was just kind of, I really gotta put up good numbers, and I want to throw the knuckleball because that's different when people hear about that. You know how it is. This guy throws a knuckleball. Oh my God, I got to see this. Everybody wants to see it because nobody sees it.
So for you, once you got back into affiliated ball with the Mets, what was that process like? Because for me, I felt like there was a clear shift for you in Double A. What was your experience like those first couple years, and then in Double A when you started to transition away from being like exclusive knuckleball and started mixing the fastball slider a little bit more?
Yeah. So I think my first couple years, our pitching coordinator, I don't know if you were there yet. You might have just gotten drafted. I don't know if you ever met Ron Romanek.
Yep.
But he was our pitching coordinator. And he was the one that kind of talked with R.A. Dickey when he was with the Mets and learned from him. And he was trying to basically clone me into being like the next R.A. Dickey, which was, who wouldn't want to be? Won a Cy Young, had a,
right.
Awesome career. But, it's kind of that point again where it was like, all right, this guy's worked with R.A. Dickey. Like, let's see what he's got. So I went in that first full season in 2016, kind of changed my mechanics and kind of been more what you see as a knuckleball pitcher, where it's just like straight up and down, straight forward and coming straight at you kind of thing. And one of the things that I kind of like prided myself on was, keeping my mechanics the exact same as I've always had them and being able to throw the knuckleball that way. And, going into 2016, I always felt like when I throw on the side, my knuckleball was really good, but I was never able to take that into the game. So again, I went back to that like effectively wild kind of thing where I, get through lineup once and then second time through, it just like guys would kind of wait me out and I'd walk them or, give a couple hits and then boom, it was like, so after 2016, I really struggled with command. In Double A and high, they sent me down for a while. Then I came back up, and then in 2017, I kind of mixed the two and got like a happy medium between what I've done in the past and what he's taught me. And about halfway through the season, something finally clicked, and I also got a different catcher. Tomas Nito started catching me, and with his game calling and like what I've been able to do, we just kind of clicked really well. The second half of the season, I just like tore it up, and then ended up going to the Arizona Fall League after that and throwing really well. And so it was just kind of finding that happy medium mechanically that was able to get me the consistency I needed
What?
to kind of take off. And again, just I know before they really wanted me to be mostly knuckleball, but with Nito knew that I could still throw 90 miles an hour and still had a good slider. Like he was able to like know when to mix in those pitches where it was able to fool hitters a lot more, and you know, things like that.
That
Just having that mind behind the plate where I didn't have to shake off all the time if I wanted to throw a fastball, where it was just like he knew like here's a good time, let's let it rip, you know?
Yeah, that's what it felt like for me in the outfield. Is that year in high A? So the year before, 2017, were you back and forth between Double A and High A? I remember you throwing a lot in St.
Um,
Lucie that year.
yeah, I think I was in Double A to start the year, and then I went back to High A for 1 month or so,
Okay.
1.5 months, and then they sent me back up to Double A to finish the season. So I wasn't like necessarily up and down, but just had a good break from Double A where they wanted me to kind of like refresh things.
So yeah, I remember when you were throwing in high A, it was mostly knuckleball, and kind of like you said, it was like effectively wild, and then times where you would walk a couple guys and then give up a hit, and then all of a sudden it's a 2 or 3 run inning. That
Yeah,
next year in Double A, it felt like you didn't get behind in counts nearly as much, and so then the knuckleball became more effective because you were throwing a lot more fastballs. You were throwing. It seemed like the slider was really effective too, because as soon as guys saw spin, they were thinking fastball, and it was like that
yeah,
pitch became extremely effective. So to me, that shift like totally changed how you pitched, where it was almost, it felt like almost more conventional pitcher with a knuckleball versus all knuckleball all the time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think even still today, I get in the habit of throwing too many knuckleballs at times too, because you know when it's on, it's really unhittable. It's an unhittable pitch when it's on, and you'll have stretches where you go like 2-3 innings and you're just like lights out, and then all of a sudden kind of lose it for an inning, and that's when you're like, okay, well I got to get it back, so I'm gonna just keep throwing it. Whereas like sometimes I do need to throw another fastball or slider just to get out of that rhythm of just like knuckleball, 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 knuckleball all the time. And it's still, just to keep the hitters uncomfortable where they're like, hey, he's going to pop an 88 to 90 in there, or, throw a 2-0 slider where they're like, okay, 2-0, he's going to throw a fastball and then rip a slider. And they're like, weak ground out to short. And they're like, what the heck? Why is he throwing a slider? He's a knuckleball pitcher.
Yeah.
Where they're just going back to the dugout, shaking their head. And like I said, sometimes I get away from that still today where just too many knuckleballs, but yeah, I think just finding that happy medium where I do have those, just show those other pitches, makes me more effective.
I got you. So the next couple of years leading up to this year, when you got called up, um, what were those couple seasons like? The COVID year was mixed in there too, so you had a year off. So what was that? Let's talk about that. What was that experience like that year with COVID, where there's no baseball in the minor leagues?
Yeah, so I had signed with the Orioles as a free agent that off season at the end of 2019. So going into 2020, I had a really, really good last month and a half of 2019, but never really got another shot with the Mets. Um, so I got two calls from the Orioles and Diamondbacks, and the Orioles gave me the better offer of like, hey, we're going to be all in on the knuckleball and give you a fair shot. So like, all right, let's do it. Like that's all I'm asking for, just give me a shot. And then COVID hit, so I went to spring training. Was backing up a lot of major league games, but never got into any games. And then COVID hit, so we all went home. And they kept in contact with you. on the minor league side, and they had the 60-man player pool, and it always seemed like everywhere I've been, always been like a one odd man out and like going to the next level. So it was like, with the Mets, I spent 4 or 5 years in Double-A, and it was always like, well, you're the next man up in Triple-A. Well, never really got too many opportunities there. And then with the Orioles, it's like 60-man player pool. It's like, all right, well, stay ready. If somebody gets hurt, you could be the next guy in. So it was like, what am I, player number 61? So it's just like always frustrating where it's like, man, I'm always that last man out of the next level. So, but stayed ready through bullpens, through live BPs to guys, just trying to get as much work in as I could. Kept in contact with the pitching coach and things like that, but it just, again, never got that opportunity with the COVID year. So after that year, I was a free agent again. We're going to be a free agent, and the Orioles, basically gave me a redo, which was nice. So I didn't have to worry about that. And then, just basically got a redo of like the spring training, and actually got to pitch in a couple major league spring training games, and threw well in them. So just going into 2021, was able to get seen a little bit in spring training and headed off to AAA for what I felt like was the opportunity that I needed going forward. So actually, first, I forgot about that. It seems so long ago. We started off with the alternate site the first month of 2021. So got invited to the alt site this year. So that was a good way to face, even though we're facing our own guys, a little bit higher level hitters than what I was facing more in like Double-A and stuff like that.
So what was it like when you got the call up? Because you spent how long, 10, 11 years between indie ball and affiliated minor leagues?
Yeah. It was it's a long time, that's for sure. I think this is my 12th year playing. So, I was just in my hotel room in Norfolk in AAA with the Orioles, and I think it was like 9:00 in the morning. And I remember looking at my phone and having our manager, Gary Kendall, call. And I'm like, usually if something's going on with the pitching staff, it's the pitching coach sending you a text or something. So I was just like, is this the call? Like, I've been pitching pretty well. So I was like, maybe they're going to give me a chance. And sure enough, he calls. He's like, hey, Mickey, they're clearing a spot for you on the roster in Baltimore, so I'm just letting you know you're getting an opportunity to go play in the major leagues. Like, and he's like, this is one of the best phone calls I've ever made to a player. I wish I could tell you in person, but we had an off day yesterday. So, I don't get to do it in person, but still one of the best phone calls I'll ever make. And he's like, just go up there and do your thing. Go out there and power shag for BP. Go just be yourself and enjoy the ride, basically. And so it was pretty special. And then next thing you know, it was just like, hearts racing, call my wife, tell her, call my parents, call my sister, just trying to make as many phone calls as I could while throwing everything in my suitcase as quickly as I can, because I had a plane to catch in like 3 hours, I think. So it's so many like emotions, but like it just felt like your heart's just racing the whole time. So
what was the experience like when you got to make that start?
I pitched in relief, actually.
Okay.
So it's kind of nice. The first day I didn't pitch, so just got to kind of take it all in, and that just kind of sit in the bullpen, just trying to look around. And obviously the Orioles weren't winning very much, so the stadium wasn't like sold out or anything, but just trying to take it all in. And my wife was able to be there with some family, so being able to see them, and it's really hard to put into words everything that was going on. But so then the second day, kind of had a feeling I'd be the long guy, So just kind of tried to stay locked in on the game and you know, trying to be more focused on the game at that time than trying to take more of it in. But I just remember, obviously with the game flow, you kind of knew what was happening. So as soon as the phone rang in the bullpen, like I knew it was going to be me based off how the game was going. And then just trying not to be like overhyped at the same time. So trying to like, be even keeled and yeah, I just remember jogging out to the mound and just trying to look around a little bit. Again, still trying to take it all in, but knowing that there's a task to do. So the biggest thing I remember is when I was warming up and over the PA announcer, now pitching, making his major league debut, Mickey Jannis over the loudspeaker, and that's kind of when I was like on the mound. And I was like, "Ooh, man." I had to take like an extra second to take like a deep breath and, be like, all right, like, let's go to work, that type of thing. So,
Yeah, man, that's pretty awesome because I remember seeing that this summer, and just my first thought was thinking about the amount of time that you grinded through the minor leagues, through indie ball, and just seeing you get that reward, get the opportunity to pitch in the big leagues was pretty cool because kind of like your AAA manager said, like you always did things the right way. You always were shagging hard and went about your business a certain way. So to see you get that call was pretty cool.
yeah.
Were there ever times throughout your career where you just didn't see it happening?
Probably the biggest was when I was in indie ball after the 2014 season when I really had that good finish in the Atlantic League, and I still didn't like get any calls from any scouts or teams or anything. And I was just like, I just remember having a conversation with my dad and just saying like, this might be my last year. Like, if nobody's going to give me an opportunity, like, how long can I pitch an indie ball? Like, I don't want to be like an independent ball lifer where it's like waiting for that call. And, it's just like, just go out this year and see what happens, and ended up getting picked up that year in 2015. So just really tried to take it and run with it. And it was still a long process in affiliated ball too. But the reason I kept pitching was I really felt like I could pitch in the major leagues one day. So, I wasn't playing baseball just to play. Like, I do love the game, but, you do have to make a living at some point. So, but I was like, I'm going to chase my dream as long as I can and, have a good supporting family and my wife along the way, and she supported it. And, luckily she likes to travel and go to all the little small towns and new places. So, that made it easier, and just told myself, I was like, I really believe that I could pitch in the major league. So that's why I kept pursuing it.
That's a beautiful thing, man. Hey, so for you, what does your out of season and in season throwing program look like?
In season, it's trying to play catch with the catchers because most pitchers don't want to play catch with me, and I'm not trying to hurt anybody by missing one. Because that's all it takes is for them to miss one and wear it in the chest, take it off the wrong finger. And but off season, I usually start my off season by throwing into a brick wall, and then I actually throw a long toss into like a batting into a like a backstop at a park. Just because it's hard to find people who will play catch with a knuckleball. So it's like, if I do play catch with someone, it's usually like I'll play catch with them with a fastball, and then when I start throwing knuckleball, it's like they want no part of it. So usually just kind of on my own to just get what I need. And then there's a couple catchers in the area that I know now that will catch my bullpen. And but yeah, I usually start up around end of November, beginning of December, start throwing. And first couple weeks are always, pretty much fastball, just getting the arm going again. getting the arm strength up. And then after a couple of weeks, that's when I start throwing knuckleballs. And usually when I'm moving back, I'm always throwing fastballs. And then when I start bringing it in closer and closer, that's when I start throwing knuckleballs and just getting that feel back. And
Do you do any weighted ball stuff, any band stuff?
no, I do. I train online with Eric Cressy's program, so I do it from a distance. So send him videos and stuff of my training, and then he comes back with a program. So I do like a lot of his shoulder program and forearm stuff. Um, but yeah, I don't really do like a band or Jaeger bands, or never really tried weighted balls. Um, just that's when I started playing pro ball, like that wasn't really a thing. So it's kind of crazy to see how much it's changed and evolved, going from, you know, really when I was in college, we used Jaeger bands and that was about it. And ever since then, you know, you see so many different programs and weighted balls and everything that guys use now. It's crazy to see how much it's developed, but I haven't really gotten into that. I really like Kresge's program that he comes up with, and actually, after the 2017 season is when I started using him, or going and using his program, and that was the first time in 2018. Actually, during the season, I topped out at 92, which I hadn't done in quite a few years. So I really thought that was a huge help from him. I was pretty much like 88, 89, mostly topping out at 90. And then 2018, I was able to get up to the 91, 92 again. So I think that was a huge help using his shoulder program a lot.
So part of why I was asking about the weighted balls is just because of the revolution that's happened, right? Like you have all the driveline stuff and kind of mixed opinions on it, right? You have people that swear by it and then people that kind of feel like, you're playing with fire there. Do you have an opinion on just like maybe what you've seen from guys you played with, or different things that you've heard?
Not really. I mean, I try to talk to him about it a little bit, but I'm really never really been interested in the weighted ball stuff. I did a little bit of that when I was in high school, actually, but kind of got away from it. Um, you know, I just feel like everybody kind of knows what's good for them and what they want to try, and you know, I'm all for all of them. Like if you feel like it's helping you, then keep doing it. If you feel like it's hurting you, you know, you might want to change something up. But it's just kind of baseball is such a field sport, especially like throwing, where you know one guy will go do a weighted program and gain 5 miles an hour, and then the next guy goes and does the same exact program, and you know might hurt his arm or it might not work at all. So it's just kind of feel like it's whatever they feel.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I've had friends that have done it and it's been huge for them, where they've gained velo, like you're talking about. I've seen guys get hurt, so it is tough. I guess anytime you're throwing a baseball, you really don't know. Like there's the possibility of arm injuries, no matter how good your mechanics are or any of that stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean those guys. Mark Pryor with the Cubs was supposed to be gifted with the most perfect mechanics, and
Right.
he was on the injured list every single year with shoulder and elbow issues. And you're like, this guy is supposed to be perfect. Like, what's going on, you know? And you don't know if it's like genetics, or maybe it is their training program or their weight program or their throwing program. Who knows? But it just,
That's what I always
you know,
found
I just think
interesting.
guys never know.
That's what I always found interesting sometimes in pro ball, when they would try to change guys' arm slots because they didn't want them to get hurt. And it was like, part of what makes this guy effective is he has a funky arm slot. And if he throws 97, I don't think it really matters like what you switch his arm slot to. I think there's still a possibility of him getting hurt at some
Yeah.
point, you know?
Yeah, I know. And all the throwing programs, like we're gonna limit this guy's innings or limit this guy's pitch count, and then they blow out anyway. So it's like you just don't know what causes it, or you know, or guys, you know, throw funky their whole life and they never blow out,
They're
never
fine.
had a
Yeah.
sore arm, you know, all this stuff. So it's just like you just never know what causes it.
I think some of it has to be just the max effort all the time. Like the,
Yeah,
specialization, you're going one inning, throw as hard as you can every pitch, throw every slider as hard as you can.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that, and I'm sure the recovery time in between where, you know, what a lot of people don't see behind the scenes is, hey, this guy pitched on Monday and Friday. Like, why is he hurt? It's like, well, he pitched Monday, but he warmed up Tuesday, Wednesday,
Mm,
Thursday, and then only pitched Friday. So it's like he threw 5 straight days, but they don't see that. They're like, yeah, he threw twice this week. Like, why is he hurt? But behind the scenes, like that's the stuff that happens, and that's the stuff that might cause the injuries.
yeah, for sure. Hey, so we're talking a little bit about how training in the game has changed since you got into pro ball. What What are your thoughts on how analytics are used now? I feel like you were always somebody that just studied the game and was interested in the different levels of the game. So, what are your thoughts on? I guess for you personally, do you use the the spin rate, the data to shape what you're throwing in certain counts or just certain hitters? Or are you more conventional where you feel like you have a good feel for when you should be throwing certain pitches and that type of thing?
Yeah, I think I know. I try to drive my pitching off more of like what I've done in the past and what I've seen that's like worked for me. So like trying to throw again, the knuckleball has a mind of its own, so it's going to do what it's going to do. But trying to throw to a certain location, not so much like on the corner, down and away, but more like halves of the plates or like quadrants. So it's like up, up and away to a righty, up and into a righty, down and in, down and away type of thing. And when I throw a certain speed of a knuckleball, like I'm trying to aim to a certain quadrant. And again, it's going to do its own thing. But usually when I try to throw to a certain area, I have an idea of like which way the ball is going to move. Um, so that's kind of how I've always done it. Analytics, there's no way to record a knuckleball. Like every other pitch is like a sinker moves this much at this arm angle or this much at this time. Every pitch has that except for a knuckleball. So when people try to talk to me about analytics or they ask me the same question, like, how does the knuckleball like get tracked? And it's like, it doesn't get tracked. Like you have a system that reads how much it breaks, but one pitch will move 12 inches this way, the next one moves 1 inch that way, and you're like, neither one of them get hit. So it's like, how is that possible? But again, that's the unpredictability that you love with the knuckleball, and again, it can't really be tracked. So for me, I think in the game, I think sometimes there's a little bit too much analytics, and sometimes you kind of got to go back to that happy medium, like where you still need like an eye test with players where you see like, hey, maybe this pitcher's, I know after the fifth inning, his numbers get really down, but today might be a little different. We might leave him in there another inning or two instead of just going like, he's reached his 85 pitch count. Like, let's take him out because he always struggles after that. Where it's like, hey, like he's really cruising right now. Like, again, sometimes as a pitcher, you cruise through 6 innings and you're at 65 pitches. There's been no stress. And then all of a sudden in the seventh inning, you get one guy on, and all of a sudden everybody's like, okay, get a reliever ready. Like, he needs to get out of there. And it's like, no, like he's cruising right now. So what? One guy got on. Like, he's had zero stress pitches the entire game. Like, that's a difference between throwing 60 pitches in 6 innings and 60 pitches in 2 innings and 3 innings, where
Right.
like, okay, these are all high stress pitches. These calculate more towards like
Fatigue
the
and
stress on his arm
yeah.
and fatigue, and how sharp his pitches will be going forward, as opposed to um, getting deeper into a game or whatever like that. And same thing with hitters. Sometimes you're like, oh well, this guy's a left-handed hitter and it's a left-handed pitcher, so he has to not play because lefties can't hit lefties. And then you look at analytics and you're like, actually, this guy's hitting 300 against lefties. Well, he's done that in the past, so analytics will say he's supposed to drop off now. So it's like, okay, we're still not going to play him against lefties. It's like, no, he's hitting 300 against lefties. Like, let him hit against lefties and things like that. Sometimes you just need to see, like, he's been crushing lefties all year. Like, let's give him that opportunity. If he's doing it, like, let him still hit, or you know.
Yeah, I heard Smoltz talk about that a little bit this year. He was talking about a starter for the Red Sox, I think, like a younger guy. and basically the storyline was what you laid out originally, like has trouble after a certain inning or like after a certain pitch count, and he was going through his
Yeah,
starts and was like, well, you only let him go above that one time. So how
yeah,
is it one, how is he gonna learn how to navigate a lineup if you never give him the opportunity to navigate a lineup
yeah,
past like two times through? And two, like how do you really know that if you've only seen him
yeah,
do it one time and haven't given him an opportunity
yeah,
to go deeper into games? Yeah, it's tough. I get both sides of it. One other question I had with the analytics, or I guess just the technology in baseball now, is like you referenced earlier a little some mechanical changes you made and stuff like that. Do you how do you balance going out and competing with trying to refine certain movements or focusing on different mechanical things you're doing? Like, do you think anything mechanics when you're out there, or do you just get into compete mode?
yeah. For me, it's just competing when you're out there, because if you're really going out there thinking like, okay, well, I need to do this, or this with my shoulder, or you know, there are times when you're like, you might be missing a location consistently where you're like, hey, I'm just getting too far out there on your front side. But that's more of like, after the inning, sitting in the dugout, going like, oh, God, I gotta figure this out. Like you talk to the catcher, you talk to the pitching coach. Are you seeing this at all when I'm out there? But then when you get back out there, like you just gotta get after it, because there's really not much time to be making. Like you do have to make adjustments on the fly, and if you're just thinking about it constantly, then it's you're taken away from the competing part. So you're kind of just going out there and just letting it rip for me, and making those adjustments either quick in between pitches when you see it, or you got to kind of talk about it in between innings. But it's really hard to make those in-game adjustments where if they're not a small adjustment, it's hard to make a larger adjustment like in game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, working with a lot of young players now, and just from my experience too, as a hitter, looking at video and stuff, obviously the level of skill right now is probably the highest it's ever been in baseball, as far as just pure ability and skill level. But I think sometimes with all the technology, all the video, all the looking at spin rate and the slow mo cameras, you can get caught up in that where you're overthinking what you're doing and you're not going to be able to move the way you want to when you're trying to think your way through it. And that's one of the toughest things for me working with young guys, when you're trying to refine certain skills and work on them. But then at the end of the day, you have to be able to get in the box or get on the mound and do it aggressively with intent. And if you're thinking through
Yeah,
that, you can't do it with intent, you know?
yeah. No, I think you were there with Frank Viola, right?
Mm-hmm.
For 1 year. Yeah. I think he was like one of the biggest advocates of that, where it's like, yeah, you can do all this analytic and studying before the game, but then when you get out there, you gotta just get after it, because you're on the mound, and the results do matter. Even if they tell you they don't, they do matter for some guys, because if you're not one of the stud prospects, or and you're just there, like you have to put up numbers, and you have to get guys out, and you have to hit the ball and do what you do best. And that's what Frank always said, is just like, go out there and compete and do your thing, and then we'll figure it out after that. We'll work on stuff in between games or in between starts. And sometimes being like a little bit more outspoken might have hurt Frank a little bit about that stuff. But that's one of the things I loved about him as a pitching coach, was you know how much he helped you and talked to you about the game. And again, he experienced the game in the 80s and 90s when none of that stuff was around. So, and I remember having conversations about it with him, and just about how much there's so much analytics and so much information to take in. Like sometimes it might hurt you, because you might be crushing the ball, and then all of a sudden you go for 4 1 game, and then next thing you know, you're just looking at all the numbers, like what's going on, when really it's just like that was one game in the season. Like, it's fine, relax, go back to hitting the ball. And some guys do get caught up in the analytics, but it's a part of the game now, so you have to take it for what it's worth. But too much information can't hurt somebody.
You just have to, yeah, you just have to know how to use it. You have to
Yeah,
look at it as a tool, not the end all be all. I think that also is
yeah,
why a lot of people really like Frank, because he was himself. You know, he was gonna tell you the way he saw it, whether that was
yeah,
beneficial for him or not. Like, he was gonna be honest with you and give you his input the way he thought would best
yeah,
help you. You know,
yep,
so
exactly.
you referenced a little bit working with Cressy, and I have a little bit of an idea of what his workouts look like. Has your workout routine changed up a lot through your career? And could you just talk a little bit about um, what your workout program looks like, if you do anything other than lifting, like if you have any type of yoga or you said you don't do a ton of bands, but any type of, I guess, alternative training outside of just lifting?
Yeah, I mean, his program has like an active warm up, foam rolling, and some stretches to get kind of like the core fired up and your legs going and things like that. So kind of doing an active warm up every day, and then doing some like med ball throws and some active like stability ball exercises. So it's just like a lot of that mixed in there. And then, like I said, my shoulder program's kind of mixed in with the weights. So if I do like a deadlift, and then like I'll go over and do like a shoulder exercise, just kind of for that, instead of just like standing around waiting for the next set, kind of doing mixing in a shoulder exercise then, so you're not really like doing it all at once at the end. Um, but yeah, I haven't really done. I used to do yoga a lot um, earlier in my career. Haven't really been into it as much lately, but I do like I actually do like the stability and the focus that you need for yoga, the stretching. Um, at the beginning of my career, I really wasn't into weightlifting at all. In college, my my coach was pretty much just a runner. Like he was old school, where he coached in the 70s and 80s, 90s with colleges, and he was like starting pitchers. They just run long distance. He's still kind of into that. So in college, our thing was running 3 miles in 21 minutes or less. So that was pretty much my thing in college. And then going into pro ball, I did a little bit of lifting with the Rays, but probably my second year in indie ball is when I really started training and lifting more. Um, so it has developed over time. And then again, back in 2017 is when I was pretty much doing everything on my own up until then. And then Cressy is the first guy that I did where I actually had somebody make up my program instead of me just kind of like researching stuff on my own.
I got you. How do you feel like getting more into lifting has affected your body or your arm throughout your career?
Yeah, I think it's helped a lot. And I think the difference is like towards the end of the season, I feel like a lot stronger than I do at the beginning of the season. So I feel like I'm able to get through the full season. Um, this past year was actually the first time probably in my career where my second half wasn't better than my first half. So,
Okay.
um, but I feel like I've always had a stronger second half of the season than the first half. So I think that's where it's something you don't really like notice. Like I don't necessarily, I'm not lifting to get, huge and strong and stuff like that. Just trying to basically just stay ready for the entire season and be able to last the full season, because it is a long grind of the season.
That's for
You know
sure.
that.
When you go into a season, do you maintain a pretty similar program in the season? So, like, I know Cressy's a lot of movement stuff, not necessarily, like there are heavy lifting components to it, but it's a lot more about moving the right way than it is about moving a
Yeah.
bunch of weight. Are you able to maintain a pretty similar routine the whole time, or is it like off season, in season?
Yeah, this year was kind of the first time where lifting was a little bit different scheduling wise because of COVID. We had rules where you could only have so many people in the weight room, or, especially on road trips, like you only had access to the other team's weight room at a certain time, so you're only allowed like 4 guys in the room. And it was a little bit tougher to get some workouts in this past year, but um, but yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is trying to keep the movement and that consistency in where I'm just trying to stay loose and flexible and just not be, wake up after a bus trip and your back's hurting, but you're just trying to keep that movement, just trying to stay loose for the season. So if I'm not lifting, I at least try to do the active movements,
And
things like that to
foam
stay
roll,
loose.
and yeah, just try to get the body back to neutral, kind of.
Yeah, yeah,
I got you. All right, Mick.
exactly.
Well, I'll ask a couple more questions and then I'll let you go. What are a couple other things that you're passionate about, maybe outside of baseball?
Right now it's just chasing around my daughter. She just turned 2, but no, I like to, stay active. So me and my wife would like to try and play tennis or golf, or pickleball has been kind of big lately. So we try to stay active and live a active life. Um, that's kind of the biggest thing. Um, she's a fitness director at a health club, so do a lot of stuff there. Um, you know, we enjoy good good TV shows now and then, and just try and take some downtime when we can, when we're not chasing around our daughter. So
Were you a big reader?
I haven't really picked that up again in a couple years again. Um, but I was probably up until 2018. I want to say I was reading a lot. Those bus trips got long, and so I would always try to pick up a good book and whether it was like some mental toughness book. I think Relentless is one of my favorite books. Read a couple baseball books. 60 Feet 6 Inches was a really good one. It was actually one of my favorite books because it wasn't really like a story or anything. It was a conversation between Bob Gibson and Reggie Jackson, just going back and forth about mostly topics about baseball, obviously, but about everything. And it was just really interesting to hear them talk about it, especially being such old school guys.
Hmm.
And then
I'm gonna have to check that one out.
yeah, and then even just you know I think James Patterson books were pretty good. I always got intrigued by his stories that he would write. So
I don't know if I've read. Is he like a mystery writer?
yeah, yeah, he's a mystery drama, crime drama type stuff. But yeah, it was really good. Those are the TV shows we usually go for. So reading his books were always had a good twist at the end.
Okay, I got you. I've read Relentless too. There's a Relentless is an interesting book. I definitely like parts of it. It also makes me ask questions throughout the book where it's like, okay, is this good? Like I see the benefit result wise of having this type of demeanor all the time. Is this
Yeah,
beneficial like full life, family,
yeah,
relationships, that type of thing, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know it's definitely a crazy when you're reading some of the stuff. You're just like, wow, I don't know if I could ever do that all the time. Just be in that mode all the time. But it does make you think. It's like that does what makes them the best there were, basically. I mean,
I think
you
yeah, I
know,
think there's something to, like you said, have that mindset all the time. I think there's something to when your energy is moving toward a certain goal or a certain type of emotion or mindset, the more you do that, the more you become that. And like when you're talking about elite athletes, it just makes sense that if you're in that mode 24 hours a day and somebody else is in it 4 hours, like you're probably going to develop that more than everyone else, you know? But
yeah, yeah,
it definitely has costs. There's like cost benefit to it, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. You definitely have to give up something to be in that mode all the time. to be that person. And you do kind of like look back at it and you do see that like, you know, some of those guys, they did struggle in their like personal life a little bit more. But, you know, maybe that didn't matter to them as much as it does to like me or you know, so it's just also depends on the person and who they are. So
For sure. Well, Mick, I appreciate you taking the time, man. It was good to catch up. Good to hear a little bit more about your story. And hopefully you'll get picked up by somebody soon and have another opportunity in 2022.
yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Good to catch up.
It was, man. Have a good rest of the day, and I hope you and your family are doing well.
All right. You too. Enjoy the holidays.
Later, brother.
All right. Bye.